Welcome to the Smart College Buyer Podcast. My mission is to help high school families pay for college without taking on a truckload of debt. Each episode, I'll share insights into college admissions, financial aid, payment strategies, and more, often with expert guests. I'm Jack Wang, your host. I started helping families after struggling to navigate the process myself for my sons. If I needed help, I knew others did too. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to this episode of the Smart College Buyer. As always, I'm Jack Wang, your host. And the picture behind me is Merrimack College. It's a college that I live near, and because I grew up in the area, I've really seen it transform over the years. Went from a private liberal arts school, which it still is, but over the years, it has really expanded, has added business and engineering programs, has added master's degrees, and eventually will be adding PhDs as part of the institution getting what's called an R2 designation, which is becoming a research university. I drive by this place often. This picture was taken about a year ago. It is a beautiful suburban campus, but it's one that I think sometimes people overlook because it's the school next door, even though it has phenomenal programs. But the reason I picked Merrimack as the backdrop for today's episode is because today I'm going to ask you to think differently. Much as Merrimack has thought differently, it has added a degree program in humanities, which isn't really all that unusual, except what they've done is they've capped the cost at really no more than the equivalent of an in-state university. So that way, students can take the humanities or major in the humanities without worrying about making a major financial investment that may or may not pay off in the future, depending on what kind of job they get. But the Merrimack College has really made it affordable for students wanting to go into that major. Again, all about thinking differently. Today, I'm going to ask you to think about differently about college costs. And so we understand college costs, right? We've talked about a sticker price or cost of attendance, and that's tuition, fees, housing and food, books, transportation, miscellaneous. Again, the most expensive schools in the country right now are $90,000+, whereas most in-state publics are in the, say, 20, 30 to 40 range, depending on what state you're in. But I'm asking you to think differently. Those aren't the only costs. There are other costs, things that people don't think about, but yet are very much there, even though they're not actually on the bill from the college. And one of those costs is taxes. And I mean income taxes. Like most things we buy, college, no different, most of our expenses are an after-tax cost, meaning that we earn money, right, at our jobs. We pay our income taxes, right, through withholding or what have you. And then whatever the money is left is then the money we get to use to pay for everything else, right? Groceries, gas, utilities, paying for college, paying the mortgage, things like that. There's only a couple of things that are really pre-tax. So things like your retirement plan contributions, such as 401ks or 403bs, if you contribute to those amounts are deducted off your paycheck before taxes calculated. So that means your taxable income's a little bit lower, and so you save on taxes that way. Same thing with health insurance premiums. So as much as we hate to pay health insurance through our employer because it can be expensive, it is pre-tax. Also, things like contributions to health savings accounts or flex savings accounts are generally pre-tax. There may be a couple other items here and there, but those are the major ones. But everything else is after tax. And so I know it's not something that people like to think about, taxes, right? And it's not something that we normally really do think about because money is just withheld from our paychecks to cover income taxes. So we can't really do much about that. Yes, we can change the withholding, but we can't really do a whole lot about it. And after all, we do owe or we do have to pay income taxes. But it can be a big deal. So for most families, okay, there's different tax brackets in the tax code. But for many families in the 22% tax bracket, just using that as a hypothetical, A college, an in-state public university that costs you $35,000 per year, and if you're in the 22% income tax bracket at the federal level, that college really costs $45,000 a year. So what that means is you really have to earn $45,000 a year, pay your income taxes, right? Or have income taxes withheld. And then what is left over is the $35,000 that you would need per year to pay for an in-state public school. So I'm using $35,000 in this example because that's an in-state cost of attendance here in my home state at University of Massachusetts Amherst campus, which is the flagship campus. Now, for a college that costs $90,000 a year, like a private school, that 22% bracket, that real cost is $115,000, right? So again, you would have to earn $115,000 to pay your taxes to end up with $90,000 to pay for college. So taxes are huge hidden expense, hidden cost, cost drag, tax drag. Sometimes you'll hear me say all of those things, but it is a huge cost. And so while a lot of times people focus on, how do we get aid? How do we get scholarships to lower the cost of the college by, lowering the cost of the bill that the colleges can send us, right? We also have to remember that there are also external costs like this tax drag. Because quite frankly, not every college is going to give your kid aid. I see that year in and year out where plenty of kids get accepted to a college, but then the kid doesn't get any scholarships or doesn't get any financial aid. Now the family is looking at paying the full cost of attendance, whether that's $35,000 or $90,000 or anything in between. However, if you can utilize strategies to help you save taxes on that tax drag, then that's another way to save money on college, even though the actual college bill doesn't change. And by the way, good time for a quick disclaimer in here. As always, this is not financial advice, okay? This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I'm only talking about taxes at a super high level. If you have specific tax questions or financial questions, please speak with your personal tax and or financial advisor about your specific situation. This is, again, not meant to be advice. But I do want to talk about to illustrate the fact that there is this thing, right? That most people, again, we don't think about this way. But if you think about in the $90,000 a year example, right, the pre-tax cost or including the cost of taxes is really $115,000. Now, just imagine for a moment if you could save $25,000 in income taxes, right? Just hypothetically. But if you could save $25,000 in income taxes that you would have had to pay anyway, right? Whether it was withheld from your paycheck or whatever. But if you were going to have to pay it anyway, and now you don't, couldn't you use that savings to help offset the cost of college? Right? I mean, you were going to have to pay it to the IRS, which is never any fun. So you could use that savings to pay for college. So as I sometimes tell people, if you're not tax aware, you're going to pay the IRS and you're going to pay for college versus being tax aware. You can pay either the IRS or you can pay for college, right? And I'd much rather have it an or decision, not an and decision. But there are strategies out there to help with this. Another hidden cost or other costs is, of course, the cost of interest if you need to borrow to pay for college. Now, of course, this makes sense to most people, right? Like, again, this isn't on the bill, right? The college isn't going to bill you for this, but if you need to borrow to pay for your kids' college, the cost of interest is going to be more. And so that's no different than buying your house, using a mortgage or a car loan or anything else, anything, right? So again, just using a hypothetical example, if I had to borrow $35,000 a year or $35,000 for the year using a Parent Plus loan rate. So as I'm recording this in the current academic year, the Parent Plus loan rate is 9.08. And when kids first graduate, everybody starts out on the standard 10-year repayment plan. So if I borrow $35,000 at 9.08% for 10 years, I would pay $18,000 of interest. And if I borrowed $90,000 on the other hand, same conditions, right? 9.08%. And over 10 years, I would pay over $47,000 of interest. So there's a huge cost there as well, right? So now when you start to think about this, it's, yeah, you have to pay tuition and fees and housing and food and buy the books. And of course, you got to go buy the t-shirt and all that stuff, right? All that good stuff. That's not really on the bill either. But, as a parent, we got a rep, right? So we got the t-shirts and hoodies and stuff. But now you add in the tax drag, now you add in the interest cost. College costs a lot more than most people think, and in fact may actually be double what the actual bill is. Okay. Now, of course, people will say in this case, but Jack, if I get a lower rate, the interest cost is less. True. If I pay off my loans early, I pay less in interest. True. Or people say, well, this is a good argument for why people should save for college so that you don't have to borrow. Also true. Okay, also true. Yeah. So not everybody's going to pay an interest cost because not everybody's going to borrow. And that will vary based on the type of loan and how long you borrow. But there is a third type of hidden cost that even exists even if you don't borrow. And so this third type takes a little bit to understand because it runs completely counter to how most people think about money. Remember, folks, I asked you to think differently today. Okay. So what you're hearing, like you may not have thought of these things ever when you're looking at the cost of college, but these are important factors. They do exist, but you may never have had someone tell you this before. But even when you pay cash, it's not free. Think about that. Okay. Every time you pay cash for something, and when I say cash, I mean use your debit card or, right? I don't necessarily mean that you're whipping out a dollar bill these days, right? But you're paying cash. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, I paid cash for my car, so I didn't have to pay interest. Yeah, that's true, but it wasn't free. Because cash, right, when you have it, you can invest it, right? Savings account or whatever, and that cash can earn for you, right? So if you took all your money and put into a savings account or whatever account, it has the potential to earn for you. It may not earn very much, but it has the potential to earn for you. But once you give the cash away, otherwise known as spending, right? Whether we bought coffee, whether we bought groceries, whether we bought a house, whether we bought a car, or whether we bought college. But once you give it away, that cash can no longer earn for you, which means we have cost ourselves the opportunity for that cash to earn for us. Hence the term opportunity cost. And it's a bigger deal than most people think, right? So as a hypothetical example, okay, what happens if I were to pay $35,000 in cash for my 1 year of in-state public university? And let's just say I earn a hypothetical 5%. Okay, again, this is not a promise or any kind of solicitation, sell you any kind of investments or anything. I'm just using a purely hypothetical 5% interest rate return. Okay. And we held on to that money for 10 years. And the reason I picked 10 years is because the loans also go 10 years, right? When we were looking at interest costs. So in $35,000, if I invested at 5%, just left it in there for 10 years for it to compound, I would earn $22,000 of interest. Or conversely, if I paid the cash that I could have invested 5% for 10 years, I cost myself $22,000 of interest that I could have earned. And then the same thing at $90,000. If I put that $90,000 away at 5% for 10 years, that would earn me around $57,000 of interest, or I cost myself $57,000 of interest I didn't earn because I spent the cash. Now, I know. Most people are thinking, Jack, but I would have spent that cash on something else. There's no guarantee that the money would have earned 5% every single year for 10 years. And what about taxes on the interest you earn? And yes, all of that is true. I get that. All of that is true. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you pay cash for something, you give up the opportunity for that cash to have earned for you. And the longer you can leave that cash in the account, right? Whatever type of account you choose to put it in, the more it earns over time. And the opportunity cost can go on for longer than loans. Because after all, in our hypothetical example, we paid off the student loan in 10 years because that's what most federal loans start with as a repayment plan. But when your loan is paid off, there's no more interest, right? Because the loan is paid off, right? And in our example, that'd be 10 years. But if you save that money instead and you let that grow for 10 years, it doesn't just automatically stop earning for you after 10 years, right? If the money's still in there, that keeps going, can earn 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, on and on and on. And the longer you let it go, the more it earns. That's the magic compound interest. So there's no time limit on the lost opportunity costs, if you will, right? Because we could leave that money in there forever. But there is a time limit on interest costs because at some point the loans can get paid off. So again, if you borrow, you'll pay interest. But if you pay cash, you might not have paid interest, but there's an opportunity cost. So where am I going with all this? Well, remember, paying for college, like anything else, you're always answering two questions. The first question is, should you buy that thing at that price, right? Should you buy Starbucks coffee I don't even know what Starbucks coffee goes for. I know it's not cheap. I'm not really a coffee guy. B, I don't really go to Starbucks that much. I know that probably horrifies for some of you listening or watching, but I don't. But should you buy that thing at that price? Okay. Maybe yes, maybe no. But the second question you also have to answer is, what's the best way to pay for that thing? And if there were ways to help you save on the income taxes you are going to pay, or minimize interest costs, or minimize opportunity costs, wouldn't you want to do it? Because again, these costs are not going to come on a bill. We don't think about it often, but they are very much there. We just don't always see it directly. But there are strategies to help minimize these things. And so again, when I ask you to think about, hey, let's think differently about college costs, this is kind of what I'm talking about. And if you're open to thinking differently about these college costs and you accept that these costs are there, which I hope you do, then you have to think differently about how to pay for college, which means borrowing isn't always the worst thing. And saving up for college, like let's say in a 529 plan, just as an example, may not always be the best thing either. Sometimes you do a little bit of both, right? Sometimes there are other strategies. And I will tell you that the tax angle is huge. So I did an episode where I talked about the different ways to save for college and how there's almost an infinite number of ways for a family to save for college, whether it's 529s, Roth IRAs, buying a piece of property, buying real estate, shoving it under your mattress, whatever, right? All those things are valid. But I will tell you, and I'm just going to hit the quick highlight here, and we'll have to do another episode on this. But in my personal opinion, the best way to save and pay for college is to have your own business or be self-employed. Hands down, number one best way to save and pay for college. My personal opinion. And the reason for that is because of all the tax strategies that are potentially available. Now, again, this is not tax advice. So go talk to your CPA or tax advisor or financial advisor if they're tax savvy about this. But in my personal opinion, owning your own business or being self-employed, number one way to save and pay for college. And why that's good is because of this tax drag. The more you can save on taxes, I think the better off you're going to be. And obviously, if you're at a higher income tax bracket because you make more, right? So under current law, I think the top of the 22% bracket is like 300 something thousand or 200 something thousand. So if you make above that, the tax strategies become even better because you're at a higher income tax level or income tax rate. But don't just think that college only costs tuition, fees, housing, food, books, whatever. It is more. And actually, once you understand this concept, then I feel like it kind of changes your life because you start to see things completely differently. I know it has for me, and because this is how I view my personal finances and how I handle my personal finances. So I'll just quickly tell you just the net effect as a result of kind of seeing stuff differently. I actually tend to borrow a lot for my major purchases. So if you look at, my finances, you see like, wow, Jack, you have a lot of debt. And it's not credit card debt, okay? I'm not like going on like a massive spending spree or anything like that. But I use debt very strategically to buy things so that way my money can keep growing elsewhere while I'm paying a relatively low rate on the debt. So that means, yeah, I have like a bunch of monthly payments and I can handle it, right? Not everybody likes to do it that way. It makes people nervous, whatever I get. And people feel all kinds of ways about debt. I get that. But if you really understand this, like I had to, someone opened my eyes to this years ago. I handle my finances now very, very differently than I used to. I used to be an all cash person, not anymore. Don't listen to this and think, hey, Jack just told me on a podcast I can go on a massive shopping spree using all this debt. That is not what I said. Okay. That is not what I said. Please don't go out and do that. I'm sure that like the store owners will be thrilled. Maybe you'll be thrilled, like in the short term, filling up your closet, whatever. But you're not doing your finances any favors if you end up doing that. All right. But college is a big decision. Right? Buying a coffee, even if you buy one at Starbucks, is a relatively small decision. But college can be a major financial decision. So these strategies or these extra costs and what you do about them and how you pay for college can have a significant impact both on your current as well as your future finances. And you certainly don't want to, I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, you don't want to do the wrong thing, but I hate that term because I don't really believe that when it comes to this, there's really a right and a wrong. There's maybe a good, better, best choices, but there's really no right choice, wrong choice. So you know what? Like, so if you saved up all the money and paid for college using cash, there's nothing wrong with that. Good for you. And if you didn't do anything about the tax drag, right? You just, you paid your taxes through your withholding your paycheck and you saved up to pay cash for college. Well, good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. The question is not about right or wrong. The question is, do you want to do better? And do you want to pay for college in a way that can help support the rest of your finances? Because there are strategies that can allow for that. Let me know what you think. Whether you like like a light bulb went off for you, or you're thinking that I've gone crazy and I'm off, gone off the deep end. Okay. But let me know what you think. I love to get feedback on all my episodes. I hope this helped clarify a couple things and hope it helped enlighten you in terms of ways of thinking about college costs and ways about thinking about finances. Again, I told you in the beginning, I asked you to think differently today, listening to this episode. So I hope that I accomplished that. All right. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Smart College Buyer podcast. I hope you found something useful for your family's journey. Follow me on social media for more episodes, videos, and tips. The links are in the show notes below. Remember, you can spend time now to plan and strategize, or you can spend more money later. Success in college admissions and financial aid isn't about luck. It's about being intentional. And I'm here to help you every step of the way.